Hello, this is Mr. Chabry, and I think it's time for another narrated Pokemon battle. So, looking at my opponent's team, there's quite a few scary Pokemon. Landorus, of course, very scary. The Charizard could be a big threat if we're not careful, and Victini can hit really hard. Tyranitar's a big threat, and I would even say Excadrill can be really hard to take care of. So what I'm going to do here is lead off with my Bronzong, as my opponent's going to lead off with the Landorus, and my opponent's going to go ahead, set up some Stealth Rocks. That's not too much of a problem for me though, because I'm just going to go ahead and Toxic. So the reason I went for Toxic here instead of setting up my own Stealth Rocks is I knew I could take whatever this Landorus wanted to go for onto my Bronzong, and I just wanted to go ahead, use this as an opportunity to put some pressure on this Landorus. I know a lot of Landoruses are defensive Landoruses. They're there to take hits. So what I'm going to hopefully do is wear down this Landorus, and I'm going to go ahead this time and set up Stealth Rocks. My opponent's actually going to bring in Victini, and there's not much Bronzong can really do to Victini. Victini's kind of a really big threat in this battle. It can hit really hard, especially with that V-Create. But I'm going to just stay in. I don't have anything that wants to come in on this thing. This thing can do a lot of damage to anything I bring in. So I'm going to just stay in with my Bronzong, as my opponent's going to U-turn out and go back into Landorus, get some Stealth Rocks damage, and intimidate my Bronzong. I just went for Toxic there, just in case my opponent did go for V-Create. In case Bronzong lived that, I would be able to put a Toxic onto that Victini. But since he's went into Landorus, it kind of doesn't work out. And here I'm just going to go ahead, go into Garchomp, because I know that this thing probably will just U-turn out again. And I just want Garchomp in here because Garchomp can be a really big threat. And another reason I went into Garchomp is because Garchomp has a Z-Crystal, and I knew if my opponent went for Knockoff, that way my Garchomp would not take that much damage, and you can't knock off a Z-Crystal. But instead, my opponent's going to U-turn out there and go into Tyranitar here. What I'm going to do is actually just go for a Swords Dance, put a little bit more pressure on this Tyranitar. I know Tyranitar has a lot of defense, and I want to be able to hit this thing with the Z move and hopefully take it out. But unfortunately, this Crunch is going to do a lot more than what I thought it would. So that's going to be enough to take out my Garchomp before it's able to go for its Z move. And I'm going to go into Golisopod now, because Golisopod can go for a First Impression. It's super effective on this Tyranitar, but my opponent's going to swap out the Tyranitar and go into Landorus, which is actually a pretty good move because it resists the First Impression, plus the Intimidate's going to make it where First Impression's not going to do that much to Landorus. This Landorus is taking a lot of damage, however. Here I learned that it's a Rocky Helmet Landorus too, so that's good information to know. Unfortunately, Golisopod's almost to half health, and this U-turn will bring it over the edge, so now I'm going to end up making my Golisopod go out in emergency exit. The red card did not matter, unfortunately. I would rather have it, you know, knock out something that would have been a bigger threat there, but since, yeah, Landorus was going for U-turn anyway, so it's going to swap out. But the emergency exit gives me an option to bring in anything I think would, you know, hopefully be sort of a counter, and I think Superior might be pretty good here. I'm pretty sure my opponent's wanting to go for Rapid Spin to get rid of those Stealth Rocks, and what I'm going to do is use this as an opportunity to set up Leech Seed. So hopefully I can start getting some more health back, and then I can start going for some Leaf Storms. And another good thing is that the Sandstorm is gone, so now Superior will outspeed this Excadrill. So we're going to get some health back, and instead of staying in, my opponent will swap out here. So unfortunately for me, the Leech Seed is gone, but I will be able to do whatever I want, hopefully, and get a lot of damage. So now Landorus is going to come in, and it's going to Intimidate, which will actually raise my attack. It's not going to matter because Superior is a special attacker, but I'm going to go ahead, go for the Leaf Storm, get a nice special attack boost, and take out the Landorus. So I'm looking like I'm in a pretty good position though, but this Victini will easily come in, and there's not much I can do, like I said, against this. So I'm going to take a V-Create, I was hoping maybe there was a chance I'll outspeed. I'm not too sure on what Victini's speed is off the top of my head, and I didn't want to actually go in and actually look it up. So we're going to take a V-Create, and unfortunately Superior will go down before it has a chance to do a lot of damage. But Golisopod will now come in, and unfortunately it's going to take some Stealth Rocks damage, but I could easily go for a first impression here. And my opponent's actually going to swap out into the Tyranitar, set up the Sandstorm once again, and that's going to make Excadrill a big threat. But I'm going to fire off that first impression, and that will be enough to take out the Tyranitar. So I'm okay with that. Unfortunately, the Sandstorm is here. Golisopod's about to, get knocked out, and Excadrill has that speed boost from the Sandstorm. So there's not much I could do here to stop this from happening. I don't want to switch out my Golisopod, because if I do, it's just going to go down to the next turn of Stealth Rocks. Plus the Sandstorm will just take it out anyway. So now I'm going to go into Bronzong. Hopefully I can put Stealth Rocks back onto my opponent's side of the field. And my opponent's actually going to withdraw the Excadrill and go back into Victini. So Victini is back here on the field, and I'm just going to use this as an opportunity to get those Stealth Rocks up. I really want to keep those Stealth Rocks up because I know my opponent has the Charizard, and without Stealth Rocks, Charizard is a huge threat, just looming in the back of my opponent's party. So now my opponent will go for the V-Create, and that will do a whole ton of damage to Bronzong. Bronzong will go down to the V-Create. Luckily, this thing's going to lose some defense speed and special defense, so that's going to be pretty nice. And it's going to take some Sandstorm damage, which isn't really that much looking at it. And I'm going to go into my Honchkrow here. So now I'm going to take some Stealth Rocks damage, unfortunately, and since Honchkrow is a flying type, it's going to be quite a bit. So now my opponent will switch into Excadrill, and this is actually a choice banded Honchkrow, so I'm just going to lock myself into Sucker Punch because my opponent will have to attack sooner or later. Luckily for me, the Sandstorm is gone, so this Excadrill cannot outspeed anything. It actually can't outspeed anything because the Sucker Punch will be enough to take it out anyway. And we'll get a nice attack boost with that. My opponent now will bring out the Charizard, knowing that Victini will not be able to handle a Sucker Punch from a choice banded Honchkrow. And it's going to take half health damage from the Stealth Rocks. That's always a good thing to have Stealth Rocks up for the Charizards, because Charizard is a huge threat. Here, I'm just going to go into Sucker Punch because, I'm locked into that. And even if my opponent roosts this turn, I will be able to do a lot of damage next turn with the Sucker Punch if my opponent does attack with this Charizard. And I'm pretty sure my opponent will have to attack, because there's no point in roosting there and then swapping out just for it to come back in and take a lot of damage. So now the Charizard will go down to a nice Sucker Punch from a +1 Honchkrow with the Choice Band. So now I am at +2, and my opponent will bring in the Tangrowth. So I know a lot of Tangrowths are actually Assault Vested, so that's pretty good for me because I've got Sucker Punch, but my opponent will forfeit the match there. So looking at that, yeah, it looked like Honchkrow was going to eventually win the entire game anyway. It was at +2, and if I needed to, I could switch into something. This Honchkrow would always be there to completely counter that Victini in the end. So we got ourselves a nice victory there. If you like this, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and I will see you in the next Pokemon video.